Hello viewers, I'm Ranjana ma'am back, and this time I have brought for you something which you have been requesting for long. Yes, Merchant of Venice. Not only that, Act 4, Scene 1. Why? Because Scene 2 there are only a few lines, but still I'll talk on it. So without wasting any more time, let's proceed. This is the climax of the drama. It is here that all the actions take place, and when the scene opens, we find Antonio is in the court of Venice. The Duke is there, the famous gentlemen of Venice are there, and the Duke tells Antonio that he has tried to, in every possible manner, to soften Shylock, to stop him from this stern course, but he stands obdurate, he stands stubborn. So Antonio says, yes, I have heard of the pains you have taken. But Antonio at this moment seems to be quite resigned to his fate. So there are several adjectives that the Duke joins with the name of Shylock. Which are they? I am sorry for thee, he tells Antonio, thou art come to answer a stony adversary, an inhuman wretch, incapable of pity, void and empty from any dram of mercy. That means he calls Shylock stone-hearted, he calls him lacking in human qualities, pitiless and merciless. 4 points. You might get a question, what are the adjectives, or what are the different ways in which the Duke describes Shylock? And Antonio tells the Duke that yes, he has heard that the Duke has tried his best to soften him, but he stands stubborn, and in a legal manner, since Antonio cannot be taken out of the reach of Shylock, he is spiritually strong to face the envy and wrath of Shylock. And now the Duke orders Shylock to be brought to the court, and when Shylock enters, we find the Duke in a very flattering manner. Rather, he tries to please Shylock, make room for him, and then he flatters Shylock by telling that Shylock, your cruelty in your demanding this pound of flesh is very strange, but we all hope that when the time comes for you to ask for that pound of flesh or to cut that pound of flesh, you will suddenly become remorseful, and instead of cutting that pound of flesh, you will refuse to accept it. Your mercy will seem to be stranger than your cruelty, and not only that, keeping an eye on his losses, you will also refuse to take a part of the money which he owes you. High hopes, but this is an indirect way of pressurizing Shylock into becoming merciful. Shylock is not a person to listen to all this. And not only that, he says that Antonio of late has suffered such losses that it will evoke pity even in the hearts of the most merciless people. The Turks and the Tatars, some people say Turks, you are free, it's a proper noun, but they are people of Turkey. So these people who have never learnt what kindness is, they are not refined, not cultured, they are cruel and relentless, even they will feel pity for Antonio. So indirectly he means, why not you? Why can't we expect that of you? So what does Shylock answer to it? Shylock tells that I have already informed you of my plans, I have already possessed your grace of what I purpose. And he also tells that he has sworn by their holy Sabbath, a Jewish festival, that he will have the due and forfeit, that means the money that is due to him and also the penalty. And he says that if you refuse me that, may the freedom of your city be endangered. And then he tells, you will ask why I go for this pound of flesh, carrion flesh, which is of no use, instead of taking the money. Then he says, I am not going to answer you. I will say it is my humor, or humor doesn't mean something laughable. Here it means an inclination or a wish. And then he goes on to explain that different people have different inclinations. Some may not like a cat. They'll get hyper when they see a cat. Some might not like the sound of a bagpipe. Some might not like bagpipe, and some might not like a pig when it is served on the table. When it is a gaping pig, means an open mouthed pig when it is served on the table. So if you ask them the reason why, they won't be able to answer you. Why? It's just their inclination which prompts them to act in such a way, and in this way they are offended, and as a result they offend others. But if you ask them, they can't give you a positive reason why they are offended, why a person is offended on seeing a harmless cat, or why a person cannot tolerate the sound of bagpipe, or another person cannot tolerate an gaping pig served in the table. In the same way, he tells, I cannot give you any reason why, but I can just tell you that I hate Antonio. And it is this hatred that has prompted me into such an action. So Bassanio is very angry, and he says, this is not an answer, you unfeeling man, to excuse your cruelty. So he says, I am not bound to please you with my answers. Today he is defiant. Earlier, poor fellow, he had to be submissive because they are minority in number. But today he knows the law is in my side. This is a legal bond which Antonio has signed. So I don't need to please you with my answers. So Bassanio keeps on reasoning that if you don't like anything, if you don't love anything, do you go to the extent of killing it? So he says, if a man truly hates something, doesn't he want it to be killed? So Bassanio then says, every offense is not hate at first. The first offense, yes, every offense, the first offense only doesn't make you hate and go and kill something. So he says, oh, then would you allow the snake to sting you twice? Excuse his first offense. And then let the snake sting you twice, and then will you go and kill it? Very nice argument, obviously. So Antonio feels, what is the use of all these? He says, don't try to argue with him, or don't try to convince and persuade him. You might try to do all the impossible tasks which might become possible, but to soften his Jewish heart is the most impossible thing, and that will never be possible. So he tells, you may stand on the beach and then tell the waves to reduce their height, which is impossible, and yet they might listen. You might ask the wolf why it had killed the lamb and made the mother sheep or the ewe cry, and the wolf might feel sorry for what he had done. You might ask the mountain pines not to make noise when the wind blows through them, which is impossible, and they might listen. But trying to soften his Jewish heart is not at all possible. And so he says, don't make any more efforts, rather give me my judgment and let him have his penalty or the forfeiture. So Bassanio tries to bargain, for your 3,000 I'll give you 6. So he says, if every 6 of these 6,000 ducats, every ducat you divide it into 6 parts, and then you offer, that means 6 into 6. If you offer me 36,000 ducats, then also I'm not going to accept it. So then Duke says, how can you expect for mercy if you don't show mercy to anyone? So he says, I haven't done any wrong, so why should I be afraid of any judgment? And then he says that many of you have purchased a slave. You have among you many a purchased slave. So, and you use them like animals which you have purchased. You use these human beings like animals. So if I go and tell you, why are you using them in this way? Why don't you let them enjoy the same food you eat? Why don't you let them enjoy the comfort of the same bed in which you sleep? Why don't you get them married to your sons and daughters? Why don't you set them free? Will you listen? No, you won't. You will say, the slaves are ours, we have bought them. In the same way, I say that the pound of flesh, I have bought it and I can do whatever I please with it. So now the Duke says, yes, I have the power to dismiss the court unless Dr. Bellario, a noted lawyer whom I have sent for, unless he comes, I'll dismiss the court. And in the meantime, Salerio informs that a messenger has come from the lawyer and he's waiting outside, and Now Bassanio is trying to cheer up Antonio, and he says that the Jew will have my flesh, blood, bones and everything before you shall lose one drop of blood. And then Shylock in the meantime takes out a knife and starts sharpening it. Antonio is in a pessimistic mood, and it is natural. He says, I am the diseased sheep in the flock waiting for death. The rotten fruit falls to the ground first. I am like that. And in the meantime, Nerissa comes as a lawyer's clerk. Portia is the lawyer, Balthazar. And the Duke is presented a letter by Nerissa. And in the meantime, Bassanio notices Shylock sharpening the knife. So he's asking, why are you sharpening this knife so earnestly? And he tells, I'm doing it to cut that penalty from that bankrupt there. So Gratiano is very angry, and he is telling that you are not sharpening your knife on the sole of your shoe, S-O-L-E, sole, but you are sharpening this knife on your human soul, S-O-U-L, soul. This is a pun, soul. And no metal can, no, not the hangman's axe, bear half the keenness of thy sharp envy. That means your envy is so sharp, the axe of the hangman is nothing in comparison. And aren't there any prayers which can penetrate you, which can get into your heart and soften you? So Shylock says that no, nothing that you have wit enough to make. And then he says that make. And now Gratiano, he comes out in a very angry mood and abusive and insulting, and he says, this is a very important speech. He says that, oh, be thou damned inexorable dog, and for thy life let justice be accused. So he says, in allowing you to live, let justice be blamed. And then he talks that you make me shake in my faith, become unstable in my faith. And once I had rejected the theory of opinion of Pythagoras regarding the transmigration of souls, but now I think I become a bit wavering and I start believing in what he said. So what did Pythagoras say? That many times the souls of animal, when it leaves their body, and it many times gets into the body of a human being, and that is the explanation for the human being's behavior being similar to that of an animal. So according to Gratiano, Shylock's soul was actually in the body of a wolf who was hanged for slaughter, and when this wolf was being hanged, the soul escaped from the body. Yes, souls are immortal. So the soul of the wolf escaped from its body and went and took refuge in the body of Shylock, who was in his mother's womb. And that is why Shylock's behavior, his desires are like that of an animal or like that of a wolf. Just see the words, for thy desires are wolfish, bloody, starved and ravenous. So Shylock is amused. He says you can go on shouting, but it's useless. Why? Because unless your words have the power to erase the stamp on my bond, your words have no value. So rather, repair thy wit, good youth, or it will fall to cureless ruin. I stand here for the law. So he is advising Gratiano to cultivate a much better way of speaking, have a better sense of humor, otherwise it will break down altogether. So can you imagine, he is rather putting salt to the injuries, he is rather making Gratiano all the more infuriated. And Duke now asks Nerissa if the learned doctor about whom Dr. Bellario has written, he has recommended a young doctor. So has that doctor arrived? And Nerissa tells that yes, he is waiting outside for the permission of the Duke. And the Duke orders his men to go and bring the young doctor in a very polite and courteous manner. And in the meantime, the clerk reads the letter. The letter is important because in it Dr. Bellario writes about the reason for his not coming. He is sick, and then he tells that At that time, a young doctor of Rome had come to visit me, and he might be young in age, but he is very experienced, and we together have consulted many books, and I have also furnished him with my opinion. So don't judge him by his years, give him an estimated money, give him a nice reverence, and his performance will prove that though he looks young, he is much more wiser. So just see these lines. He is furnished with my opinion, which bettered with his own learning, the greatness whereof I cannot enough commend. That means I don't have enough words to commend on his greatness, on his intelligence, on his learning, and he comes on behalf of me to fill up my place. And he also requests the Duke that just because he lacks in age, just because he is young, let that not be an obstacle to give him a reverend estimation. Because he says, I've never seen a person so young with such an experienced and such experience and maturity. So old ahead doesn't mean that he's like an old person having white hair and bald. No, nothing of that. It means old people are supposed to be experienced. Why? Because they have seen the world. So they are experienced, and experience counts. But the lawyer, though he seems young, he is full of experience and maturity. And he says that if you allow him to fight the case, he will prove it. And then Portia comes in, as I told you, and immediately she takes charge of the situation. So when she asks Shylock, when she tells Shylock to be merciful, Shylock says, what is the compulsion? Just tell me that. So this speech of mercy speech is important, though it has most probably come in the boards once, and yet go for it, you never know. The quality of mercy is not strained, it droppeth as the gentle rain. So mercy is a divine quality. Just like the rain comes from heaven, mercy also comes from heaven. So it is a divine quality, and it blesses both the receiver and the giver. That is why mercy is twice blessed. And the king who sits in his throne with his crown on his head and the scepter or the rod of authority in his hand, but what makes him look better, or what he is a better king if he has mercy in his heart. So just see this line. His scepter shows the force of temporal power, the attribute to awe and majesty, wherein doth sit the dread and fear of kings. So the rod is symbolic of temporal authority, and looking at the king, his subjects are afraid. But when a king mingles mercy with his judgment, then his judgment seems to be divine, like God's rule in heaven. And he says that we all pray to God to be merciful towards us. God is merciful. If he were to give us as much as we deserve, then none of us would have been saved. Because he is merciful, he overlooks many of our mistakes, and maybe he punishes us for a few of them. But if he were to punish us for each and every fault, then none of us would have been saved. Why are we saved? Because God is merciful. And this same mercy should teach us that as we expect mercy from others, we should also be merciful towards those who expect it from us. So Shylock says, oh, I am ready to hold myself responsible for my own deeds, but here I demand the penalty and forfeiture of my bond. So then Portia asks whether Antonio is not able to pay the money, and Bassanio says, no, I am ready with it. And then he advises Portia to take the law into her hands and to do a little right, do a great right, do a little wrong. Great right is to save the life of a man, do a little wrong is to deprive the man of his forfeiture. So Portia, I told you earlier also, she refuses. It must not be. There is no power in Venice can alter a decree established, a rule which is already made. You cannot change it. And why? Because it will be recorded as a precedent, and similar cases will crop up. And then this case will be brought up. And then Shylock is naturally pleased, and he calls her a Daniel. And after that, Portia again tries to offer money to Shylock, And he says, no, 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 I have taken an oath. And shall I commit the sin, perjury, that means committing a sin of breaking an oath, and that also for Venice? Not at all. And then again Portia supports him and says the bond is forfeit, and he might claim, Shylock might claim his pound of flesh. And then again she requests Shylock to be merciful, take thrice the money and tear the bond. So he says, yes, I will tear the bond when all the conditions have been followed. And he says, you seem to be a very efficient judge, and I stay here on my bond. No words can change me. So then Antonio is ready. He says, yes, I agree to it. Then Portia says, okay, then you get prepared for the knife. And Shylock again showers lavish compliments on Portia. Oh noble judge, oh excellent young man. And then Portia again says, yes, you can have your pound of flesh. And Shylock again compliments that you look much more mature than your age. How much more elder art thou than thy looks? You can quote some lines from Merchant of Venice. And Portia, therefore, she tells Antonio, lay bare your bosom, remove your shirt and expose your bosom, because from there the pound of flesh has to be cut. Shylock is very happy, and then Portia asks if he has managed a balance to weigh, and he says yes, it is ready. He has put it inside, he brings it out from inside his cloak. And then she lays a trap for him. She asks him if he has brought in a doctor, otherwise Antonio might bleed to death. This is what Shylock wants, so why should he arrange for a doctor? So he says, no, 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 I can't find it in the bond, it's not written in the bond. And then Portia says that yes, Antonio is well prepared. He says that I am well prepared, and Bassanio, let me bid you goodbye. Don't feel sad that I have I'm coming to such an end for your sake, because I think fortune, in at least my case, shows herself to be more considerate, more kind to me. Why? Because it is normally her custom. She robs them of their money, and then she makes them live a long life to suffer poverty. At least in my case, she is being more merciful. I have lost my money, but she has cut down my life so that I don't have to suffer the penury or the poverty. So at least she is being merciful in my case. And then he tells Bassanio to go and tell his wife, tell her the process of Antonio's end, and say how I love you, speak me fair in death. And when the tale is told, bid her be judge whether Bassanio had not once a love. So he had loved Bassanio from the core of his heart, and he wants that Bassanio should report everything correct about him to Portia, and let her be judge that before she came into his life also, Bassanio had someone who loved him a lot. And he also tells Bassanio that repent only that you are losing your friend, but I don't repent in giving my life. And Bassanio, I told you, he tells that he is married to a wife who is very dear to me as his own life, and he says my life, my wife and everything that I possess in this world, they are not above thy life. Your life on one side and all these things in the other side. To me, your life is more important. And he's ready to lose everything, sacrifice everything, only to free Antonio from the hands of this cruel devil he calls Shylock. I told you Gratiano goes one step forward and he says, I wish my wife were dead and in heaven, so that she could have used some divine charm to curb Shylock of his or make him change his mind. Nerissa, I told you, had said, it is well you offer it behind her back, the wish would make else an unquiet house. And I told how Shylock was irritated at this talk because he felt, just see the examples of Christian husband, and then he wishes, would any of the stock of Barabbas had been her husband rather than a Christian. And then Portia tells Shylock that a pound of merchant's flesh is yours. Shylock is very happy, and she tells again, you must cut this flesh from off his breast, the law allows it and the court awards it. Shylock again goes on with his compliments, most learned judge, a sentence, come prepare, he tells Antonio. Now tarry a little. Here Portia says tarry a little. At another place she says tarry Jew. So please be aware for what she tells tarry. many times I've seen my students confuse one for the other. Here she tells tarry means wait a little. Why? And when does she say? When Shylock tells Antonio to prepare himself for the knife of Shylock, then she tells him tarry a little. And she tells that the bond gives you only 1 pound of flesh but no drop of blood. So the bond doth give thee here no jot of blood. The words expressly are a pound of flesh. So you can go on, carry on, take your pound of flesh. But in cutting it, if you shed 1 drop of Christian blood, your lands and goods will be confiscated according to the laws of Venice. Now it's Gratiano's turn to rejoice, and he compliments Portia, O upright judge, and then he teases Shylock, mark Jew, a learned judge. So now Shylock is confused. Is that the law? Portia says, yes, you will see the act. You had asked for justice, so be assured you will get more justice than you really wish for. Then Gratiano again compliments, O learned judge, and then again he teases Shylock. So Shylock then says, okay, I take this offer, pay the bond 3 times and let him go. Bassanio, I told you, is ready, here it is. But Portia says, no, nothing doing. He has asked for the penalty and he will have nothing but justice and the penalty, and that to be cut at his own risk. So now Gratiano, he is rejoicing and rejoicing and rejoicing. The tables have turned and in favor of Antonio. So Portia tells Shylock, you prepare yourself to cut the pound of flesh, but don't shed any drop of blood. And not only that, you cannot cut even a little more or a little less. And only a pound of flesh, exactly a pound of flesh. If you cut more or less, then what will happen? Even if it is at the slightest, smallest scruple or the breadth of a hair, then what happens? Thou diest, you will die and all your goods will be confiscated. Now and Gratiano calls now Portia a Daniel. And now infidel, I have you on the hip. That means I have you in a disadvantageous position. And Portia is now asking, why are you waiting? Carry on. So Shylock, he says, then give me my bare principal, the 3,000 ducats, and let me leave. He is a defeated man and now he wants to escape. So Portia, again Bassanio, the ever ready person, but Portia says, no, he has refused the money, so he'll have justice only. Gratiano again repeats, a Daniel. Thank you, Jew. I thank the Jew for teaching me that word. Just see the jest and mockery of Shylock. So he has made himself a mockery. And Shylock then again asks, won't I have my principal also? So Portia says, no, you will have nothing but the penalty, but the forfeiture of a pound of flesh, and that to be cut at your own risk. So then Shylock is very annoyed and he says, then let him go to the devil. I'm not going to stand here anymore. Again Portia now says, tarry Jew. Earlier she had told Shylock, tarry a little, tarry a while. Why? When he was telling Antonio to prepare himself for his knife. And now she says, tarry Jew. When does she say it? When Shylock is about to leave. So don't confuse the two. I've seen my students confuse and give the wrong answer. So please be aware of the two places. And then she reads from the book what is written in the laws of Venice, that if a foreigner plans to conspire against the life of a citizen directly or indirectly, then what are the penalties he has to pay? All his property will be confiscated. Half of it will go to the offender against whom he has plotted, and the other half to the state treasury. So the party against the which he doth contrive shall seize 1/2 his goods, and the other half comes to the privy coffer of the state. And what about his life? The offender's life lies at the mercy of the duke only against all otherwise. So no one but the duke alone can offer him mercy. And Portia tells, and you are in a similar situation, because it has been proved in a number of ways that directly and indirectly both you plan to take the life of Antonio, and as such you have incurred the danger which I have just now told. So go down on your knees and beg mercy of the duke. So Gratiano it is his turn to ridicule Shylock. So he says that beg that you mayest have leave to hang thyself. So go and beg to the Duke, not of your life, but that you should be allowed to hang yourself. But since all your property has been confiscated, they are not yours anymore, you don't have the money to buy a rope to hang yourself, so let you be hanged at the state's expense. Already he is in such a bad mood, and Gratiano's words are like adding salt to his injuries. So the Duke tries to show that the Christians are merciful and how different they are from the Jews. So he says, thou shalt see the difference of our spirit. I pardon thee thy life before. So before you ask for the pardon only, I have forgiven you. And your half wealth is Antonio, so there we have no say. But regarding that which goes to the state treasury, you can be allowed to get away with a fine if you sincerely repent for your actions. The other half comes to the general state, which humbleness may drive into a fine. So Portia reminds that is not regarding Antonio's money. And then Shylock rather says, you take my life, because what's the use of giving me life? How can a house remain when you take away the pillars? So my money are my pillars. So if you take away the money, like if you take away the pillars, the house will fall. So if you take away my money, I will automatically die. It's no use giving me life, because I am a money lender. If I have no money, I will starve to death. So then Antonio is asked what mercy can he render, and Gratiano again says a halter, nothing but a halter, free of charge. So Antonio, so this is an important speech. So please my lord the Duke and all the court to quit the fine for one half of his goods. I am content. So he will let me have the other half in use to render it upon his death unto the gentleman that lately stole his daughter. So he says that he would be content only under the condition that if he is allowed to use the other half, so that after Shylock's death he can transfer it to Shylock's son-in-law Lorenzo, who has recently eloped with his daughter. And two things, that for this favor, two conditions, that Shylock should become a Christian and he should write a gift deed that when he dies, all the things he possesses at the time of his death, they should go to Jessica, his daughter, and Lorenzo, his son-in-law. So the Duke says yes, he has to do it, otherwise the pardon which I have granted, I will take it back. So Portia asks Shylock if he is contented. Shylock has no other option. So he says he is contented, and then he tells that I am not feeling well, so you can send the gift deed after me and I will sign it. And Gratiano, before Shylock leaves, gives him one more insulting speech. In christening shalt thou have 2 godfathers. Had I been judge, thou shouldst have 10 more to bring thee to the gallows, not the font. So he says that in becoming a Christian, you will have 2 godfathers. Once when he had, after his birth, when he was baptized and given the name Shylock, he had a Jewish godfather. Now that he will become a convert to Christianity, he will have a Christian godfather who will give him some Christian name and baptize him. So in that case, he will be having 2 godfathers. So Gratiano says that if I had been the judge, I would have given you 10 more godfathers. That means 2 plus 10, 12 juries. The 12 juries assist a judge in his judgment. So, and I would have sent you to your gallows, not to the church to be, not to the font or the church to be baptized. So after that, Shylock leaves a defeated, sad man. And then the Duke requests Portia. These are not so important. So, and Portia refuses very politely because he has to leave for Padua. That is what, as the lawyer, she says. She has to report as if to Dr. Bellario. So the Duke is sorry, and then he tells Antonio that they should pay this gentleman. And then they leave, and I told you Bassanio keeps on insisting that the lawyer should accept something. So, most worthy gentlemen, I and my friend have by your wisdom been this day acquitted of grievous penalties, in lieu whereof 3,000 ducats due unto the Jew, we freely cope your courteous pains withal. So, he offers the 3,000 ducats which was due to Shylock. He offers this as a payment for the service rendered by the lawyer. So Portia, Antonio says yes, and we will remain indebted to you in love and service. So Portia says that person considers himself well paid, who's satisfied with the work he has done, and in getting you freed from Shylock, I am satisfied, and as such I think I am contented, and I don't ask for any payment because I feel I am well paid. My satisfaction is my payment. And I was never money minded, so I just request you that know me when we meet again. I wish you well. So know me when we meet again, this is ironical. Why? Because next time when they meet, they will meet her as Portia, not as Balthazar the lawyer. And they might not know that yes, this was the lawyer. Unless there are some proofs, they would not be ready to accept this fact also. So this line is ironical. So Bassanio keeps on insisting, dear sir, of force I must attempt you further. Yeah, he wants to persuade Portia into accepting something. Take some remembrance, if not money, something as a tribute, take something. And please allow me two things. Don't refuse to accept something as a tribute, and to forgive me for pressurizing you so much. And now I told you, Portia asked for Antonio's gloves, and from Bassanio she asked for his wedding ring, and now he is in trouble. And for your love, I'll take this ring from you. So what does Bassanio do? The moment he hears that, he puts his hand back, and she says, no, don't draw your hand back. I won't take anything else but the ring. So he tells that this ring is a trifle, and I don't want to make myself feel ashamed by offering you such a paltry thing. And Portia says, no, I am not going to have anything but this, and now I have set my mind to get it. So then Bassanio tries to explain that there is more on it than on the value of the ring. I will give you the most expensive or the most valuable ring in Venice. And how will I do it? I'll make an announcement, and after that get it for you. But for this ring, please forgive me. And Portia pretends to be angry. Sir, you are very generous in making offers. Sir, you are liberal in offers. You first taught me to beg, and now methinks you teach how a beggar should be answered. So I was not asking for anything. You only told take something, and when I am asking and you are refusing to give that to me. So you teach me to beg, and now you are showing me how a beggar should be answered. That means how to refuse a beggar. Bassanio is really in trouble. Good sir, now he has to acknowledge that this is his wedding ring given to him by his wife, and the conditions he had promised to keep, that I would neither sell nor give nor lose it. He had promised his wife. So Portia says, oh, when people, as the lawyer Balthazar says, oh, this excuse many people give when they don't want to part with a thing. So, and if your wife is not a mad woman, she wouldn't have, and she comes to know how much I deserve the ring, she wouldn't hold enmity with you forever. She would not hold out enemy forever. Well, peace be with you. And she pretends to be angry, and she leaves dissatisfied. And then Antonio feels this is not, the right thing has not happened. This young man deserves so much, he has done such a great deed, and that he should be refused a small ring. So, my lord Bassanio, let him have the ring, let his deserving and my love withal be valued against your wife's commandment. So, he tells Bassanio that please give him the ring, my love, that your love for me combined with his own deservings, put them against your wife's orders and give him. And what could Bassanio do? A man who had risked his own life for his sake, a man who was about to die, and he can't refuse that man. Antonio, he can't refuse Antonio, so he sends Gratiano with the ring. And not only that, he tells that invite him to my house also, because we are going there, and tomorrow we will set forth for Belmont. And I told you Act 4 Scene 2 is a very small scene where the ring is handed over to Portia, and Nerissa also tells Portia that she will try to see if she can get Bassanio, her husband's ring, that means Gratiano's ring. And this is where your Act 4 ends. I hope I have been able to explain to you along with the important speeches. So just let me know in your comment section, and if you have some more problems in this, you are free, but there is hardly any time, so read the text as well as my explanations. You can turn the video on and on to understand or to listen to the explanations. And again, a very good time with your books, this time books and workbooks. Which workbooks are you following? I don't know. Many of my students follow Xavier Pinto, some go for Selena. Whichever it is, go for it very well. And Merchant of Venice, each and every line is important. We may go for the probables acts, Act 1, Act 3, Act 4. Why? Because Act 2 and Act 5 has come last year, but still there are chances. Act 2 scene 7 has come, but not the rest of the scene. There are 9 scenes. So if you eliminate one, so don't leave anything in that way. And Act 5 has only one scene. So still go through everything, but give more focus on these 3 acts, and Act 3, Act 4, Act 1. I've already explained to you well, and I think it will help you in your studies. So have a good time with your Merchant of Venice and the prose and poems. If you have not subscribed up till now to my channel, please do subscribe. If you have found this video good, helpful, press the like button, and bye for the time. Ranjana ma'am wishes you all the good luck. Best of luck, students.